This is a podcast from soof.co.uk. Hello, I'm Patrick Downs. This is all about film, whether it be Blu-ray, DVD or streaming. This is Bring the Film. Edgar Wright's psychological thriller about a young girl passionate in fashion design who's mysteriously able to enter the 1960s where she encounters her idol, a dazzling wannabe singer. But 1960s London is not what it appears, and time seems to fall apart with shady consequences. This is Last Night in Soho.
Miss Collins?
Yes?
It's Ellie. We spoke on the phone.
Oh, yes. Room is on the top floor. Have a few rules. Don't take smokers.
I don't smoke.
No male visitors after 8 o'clock.
Not a problem.
And no using the laundry room at night. It rattles right through to mine.
I don't do laundry.
Aye?
I mean, I don't do nighttime laundry. I do laundry. I'm very clean.
Good. It's a bit old-fashioned for some, but I won't do nothing to it. If you don't like it, you can find somewhere else.
It's perfect. I love it.
Directed by Edgar Wright and stars Anya Taylor-Joy, Thomasin Harcourt Mackenzie, Matt Smith and Terence Stamp. So to Anya Taylor-Joy, who plays Sandy, can you tell me more about your favourite memory on set?
My favourite memory of Last Night in Soho was Matt, Thomasin and I all doing the dance at the very beginning, the first 60s sequence. That was so much fun and so technical, which I really, really enjoy. But also because most of it's in camera, any time that we're not on screen, one of us was running behind the camera like a loon, and it was just so much fun to actually be there and see that side of it. I almost prefer the behind the scenes to the actual shot, which says something, I think.
What was it like working with such a talented cast?
It was wonderful because you get so inspired by the people that you work with, and especially every time, you know, if you work the way that I do and you're doing so many different movies, every time you meet somebody new, you learn something more about your craft, and I definitely learned from Tomo and Matt. And then we all just liked each other so much, so that helped on the night shoots. We were doing night shoots for a long time, and that was really helpful.
Tell me more about being inspired by Edgar Wright, who writes, directs and produces this film.
Edgar loves film and music so much that you cannot help but be inspired when you are around him. Like, his excitement is so contagious, and it's, I don't know, you just never forget that you're doing something exciting when you're with him, and I love that because I love filmmaking and I love music, and so blending the two of them together is pretty ace.
What was it like shooting in Soho?
Filming at nighttime in Soho in London is such an experience. The characters that you see, it's pretty wild, but what was also really funny is you're going to work and you're seeing your friends going out for the weekend, and you're just like, what's real? What isn't real? Where am I? But it was so much fun also because I spent a lot of time in Soho in London, and because of our filming schedule, we got to find out all about these little alleyways and these shortcuts and stuff. So I now feel like I'm a secret spy of London Soho.
What about the role of music in this film?
Music plays a huge role in our movie, but it does in every single one of Edgar's movies. You know, he really is a fan, which is something that we connected on a lot. But I think the music really anchors you into the time and place. It helps you understand Eloise's obsession with the 60s. It kind of paints a very glamorous picture. And then with the score, what we've done is we've added in all of these really dark elements to it, and it was such a pleasure to be a part of that.
What about the experience of singing in the film too?
It was really lovely because I had Matt there, and Matt loved it, and he was so supportive and sweet, because it's quite nerve-wracking to stand on a stage in front of people that you respect and admire, and at that point are your friends, you know, and just standing there and singing. But it was such an incredible experience, and it definitely, you know, I caught the bug from it for sure.
What was it like collaborating with Stephen Price, the composer, and Edgar Wright?
I have loved collaborating with Steve Price. He's just so wonderful, and he has such an avid love for music, obviously, but he gets really into the details and the stories behind everything, and he's so supportive. And also just Edgar's excitement. Honestly, Edgar's excitement is really contagious and fun, and it just always makes you remember that you're doing something that you wanted to do when you were a little kid, you know, so it kind of keeps the dream alive in that way. So yeah, collaborating with the two of them, and they both are appreciative of when I go creepy, which I really enjoy doing. It is very fun to do like a little girl sing-songy, creepy voice on tracks. I enjoy that.
And tell us more about the film's use of practical effects.
One of the things that made us all so excited about the film from the beginning is how much of it Edgar wanted to be practical. So rather than, of course there's VFX in the movie, but whenever we could do it for real, we did it for real. And so there are shots of, you know, a camera coming through a mirror and you think it's me, but it's actually Thomasin, and I'm running around behind, and we're figuring it out that way. And that was so much fun because you just had a real sense of teamwork, because so many little things had to go right in order to pull a move like that off. And then when you go back and you watch it on the monitor and you're just like, oh, like, I mean, I remember that there was a scene, I mean, it's pretty much all of them, but anytime we nailed it, like, I don't know, I'm waiting behind a pillar and Matt's walking with Thomasin and then we swap hands and it's seamless. That felt so good. So, yeah, I'm really proud of the practical effects of the movie.
Directed by Edgar Wright and stars Anya Taylor-Joy, Thomasin Harcourt Mackenzie, Matt Smith and Terence Stamp. Our film correspondent Kerry-Ann McNally caught up with Matt Smith, who plays Jack, about how he felt to be finally collaborating professionally with his friend Edgar Wright.
It was a joy. I was so excited when I got a script from Edgar, because I'm such a huge fan of pretty much all of his movies, and I think he's one of the most original, you know, and best sort of British filmmakers that we have. His talent and his insight into film history as well is just mind-boggling, really. And I'm really, really proud of this film, really proud.
What was it about your character Jack that kind of piqued your interest as an actor?
It's always nice to play a villain in many respects. I love the idea of the 60s-ness of it, really, and the kind of being a fan of all those gangster actors like Kane and Ollie Reed and people like that from that era. Terence, of course. I thought it was an opportunity to try and do something a bit like that, I suppose, on some level, and that was really appealing to me because I'm a huge fan of that genre of actor and indeed film.
The creative team behind it did a lot of research into kind of that era and specifically in Soho. Did you do any yourself? Did you get to chat to anyone like that?
I mean, he's such a sort of kind of cinephile, Edgar, that he gives you a list extensively of films from the 60s in London, films from the 60s in America, great actors from that period, actors and films from Italy that are part of the horror genre, and you can go through that. And then he sort of compiled this log of information, which was all the misdeeds and nightly misdoings, I think recorded by the police or someone like that went on in Soho over a period of time or a period of months in the 1960s in London. And it was just a sort of treasure chest, really, of different avenues to go and walk down, which he'd obviously done so much research on. Yeah, you know, just to sort of spend an hour in Edgar's company and talk about any decade of film is an education. He really has seen everything.
Now, you've got some very intense scenes with Anya, and both your characters quite volatile at times. How was it going head-to-head on screen with her?
Oh, I just think she's fabulous, isn't she? I've only recently finished The Queen's Gambit, in fact, and I was like, wow. I love Anya. I think she's got such presence on screen and such adept sort of technical skill. I just think she's a fabulous actress, and I think you can't take your eyes off her in this film, can you? So it was a joy, really. Yeah, I felt very lucky to have so many scenes with her.
We have to talk about the scene in which she sings downtown as well. And obviously you were in that scene. How is it incredible to see her do that?
Yeah, she's one of those sort of really frustrating people that can sing and dance with what appears to be zero effort. You know, the dance scene, she seemed to pick up really quickly, and I'd be there like moving around like a penguin as best I can with a cigarette in my hand, and she'd be gliding around like some sort of ballerina. She's incredibly skilled and a joy to watch and a joy to work with.
I have to say those were some excellent Strictly moves by you in that dance scene.
Well, thank you very much. What can I say?
And talking of that dance scene, how impressed were you with how Thomasin and Anya kind of managed to mirror their performances so brilliantly? God,
and you know, that's all them doing it, pretty much. They're literally being, all that mirror stuff is them doing it to one another in perfect sort of harmony and time. I have to say about Toma as well, she's such a brilliant actress and is just going to have such an exciting career, I think. So I felt very, very lucky to sort of work with them both.
I saw the film in a Soho cinema, and it really felt like I was stepping back out into the movie after I'd seen it, which was really surreal for me. How fun was it to be filming for you, like in the middle of Soho?
Oh, so much fun because I live in London. I love London. I spent so much time in Soho. And, it was like a Friday or Saturday night and we closed down Greek Street and Wardour Street and, turned it into the 60s, which was fascinating. I mean, I was in that old Triumph car, sat there seeing my mates walk out the pub. And it feels like a real love letter to London as well, I think.
I know you don't have any on-screen scenes with them, but did you manage to spend any time with the late, great Diana Rigg and the formidable Terence Stamp as well?
I've known sort of Diana from Doctor Who, so I spent as much time as I could with Diana because she's just such fabulous company, as well as being this amazing, incredible actress. And she was sort of achingly funny and witty and dry, and I just loved her. And I think she's so great in the movie. And I didn't know Terence, but there were a couple of days where we crossed over, and obviously he's the great Terence Stamp, and still sort of impossibly beautiful as well. That first shot of him with those blue eyes sort of scream out at you. Yeah, I just felt, privileged really to be in a movie with those absolute icons of the British screen.
We have to talk about the music as well.
Yeah,
the music feels very important to Edgar movies. Did he make you like a playlist or have it playing on set? How did he kind of incorporate it into how you guys were acting on set?
Yeah, all of the above really. So when you get the script, you get these sort of musical cues. So he's got all that planned out, all 10 songs, so that you'll get to page 5 and he'll say, play this song now. So then you play that and you read the next scene. And then you get to page 24 and they'll go, play Cilla Black, and then you play Cilla Black and they're going into the Café de Paris and coming down. And then, so obviously on set we had a lot of the music pumping out, and it's just, again, if you spend any time with Edgar, he's got such a vast, detailed knowledge of avenues of music, and like the sort of Sparks Brothers doc that he just made, he's got sort of really inquisitive mind when it comes to, just musical history, and it's a great element to most of his films, I think. They've always got really great soundtracks. There's some belters in this, aren't there?
Yeah, did you have like a favourite musical scene really in the film?
Yeah, You're My World, Cilla Black, going into the Café de Paris. Absolutely blinding, I think, when the bed linen comes over and she goes out, and I just think, what a great bit of cinema. Finally,
as well, those were some really dapper suits that you get to wear on screen. How much did you work with the wardrobe team to kind of get Jack's look just right?
All credit has to go to the costume designer, who did a fantastic job of making the 60s feel totally iconic, I think. And those big boxy suits, which at first I was like, I want it to feel more fitted. And she was like, no, trust me. This was, if you look at pictures of Cary Grant or the Krays or any of those people back in the 60s, they were big, square, boxy suits. I quite like clothes and stuff. And I think the fashion really screams off the screen, actually. And it's a real virtue of the film, I think. So I was really happy. I wish I got to keep the blue pinstripe one.
The bartender said I should get to know the handsome fella standing next to Cilla Black.
You should. And you are?
The next Cilla Black.
Are you now? Well, she started out as a coach-up girl.
You willing to work your way up?
Of course.
What can I get you to drink?
It's Sandy, and I'd love a Vespa.
James, we'd love a Vespa. So what do you do, Sandy?
Well, I sing, of course.
How's your dancing?
Care for a demonstration?
Directed by Edgar Wright and stars Anya Taylor-Joy, Thomasin Harcourt Mackenzie, Matt Smith and Terence Stamp. Our correspondent Kerry-Ann McNally caught up with Thomasin Mackenzie, who plays Eloise, about the experience of working with Edgar Wright.
It was really exciting. Edgar's films are so, as you say, they're so specific to him. You always know when you're watching an Edgar Wright film. I think Last Night in Soho is very kind of different from everything he's done before. I think I'm right in saying that it's his first film with like 2 female leads. So that's really exciting. But you can still definitely see his voice all throughout it. He's got his own like specific Edgar Wright genre even. So I was very excited to work with him and to be a part of, realizing his vision.
And there are some amazing scenes with you and Anya mirroring each other. How did you and her build up that relationship to get those just like perfect?
Yeah, I think a lot of it came down to time in rehearsals and talking through the script, but also doing dance choreography rehearsals and rehearsing the mirror scenes and how we had to imitate each other. A lot of my job when it came to the scenes with Sandy, who's played by Agnes, was just to observe, really. I spent a lot of time watching silently. I felt like I got to know her quite well in that way. We just had a great time together.
And I have to ask about working with the late, great Diana Rigg as well. How much did you enjoy sharing the screen with her?
Diana is incredible in the film. She is so impactful in it. Her performance is really, really, really something else. So I was very honored to share the screen with her. I wish that she could have been here with us on the release of the film to have seen everyone's reaction to her amazing performance. I felt very, very lucky to have worked with her for sure.
I saw the film in a Soho cinema and it felt like I was stepping back out into the movie.
That is surreal. Insane.
Yeah. How was it for you to film in the middle of Soho?
It was the first time I'd properly spent time in London and in Soho, so it was quite an interesting introduction. It was I feel like I got to know the Soho streets quite well. I spent a good amount of time sprinting through them, bumping into people and running away from terrifying figures. So but I love Soho. I really, really love London. If I were to move anywhere, it would probably be there. I felt very at home there, and through working on Last Night in Soho, I feel like I made some really wonderful friendships.
And just quickly with the music, how much did Edgar make you a playlist, or how was the music like on set going into the film?
Edgar made a playlist that he shared with everybody who was part of the production, a playlist of all the songs that you hear throughout the film, and those songs were played while we were filming on set, because a lot of the scenes were to the beat of whatever song it was. So I got to know them very well. I listened to them on repeat for months on end, and so when we got to finishing the film, although I loved the song still, it was definitely time for a break to listen to maybe some more modern day music. But no, I loved the music. I've always been a big fan of the Beatles, and I feel like through Last Night in Soho I got a great education into kind of music and film and fashion and everything from back then.
So our film correspondent Hayley Donaghy caught up with Edgar Wright and Christy Wilson-Keynes about the inspirations behind Last Night in Soho and the real-life experiences that drive the on-screen leads.
Before Christy came on board, I'd sort of conceived of the story, and I guess there's elements of it that are like not autobiographical for me, although I did come from the West Country to London, but certainly like my mother has some of the same experiences of like sort of being in art college. My sister-in-law actually came from Cornwall to go study fashion at art college, and there are lots of other like sort of like things that are just kind of in there, and then in a way just I guess an obsession with the 60s, and certainly those dramas where there are a lot of like dramas of the time that seem to be kind of about slapping the wrist of the young generation, that whenever you had a character that has the audacity to want to come to London and become a star, they seem to be roundly punished for their efforts. And I'd seen a lot of those movies, and I thought that was an interesting, like sort of an odd phenomenon, and I thought there was a way to kind of like subvert that and make a movie about a modern girl coming to London who's obsessed about the 60s, who then gets to go back and to see twin narratives, essentially.
Absolutely. And Christy, I understand that you worked in Soho and lived in Soho as well. I'm intrigued to find out what stories and Soho experiences you wrote into the script.
Well, I lived above a strip club in Soho, and I worked in the Toucan, the Irish bar in Soho as well. I think the only things I directly imported from my real life were creepy taxi drivers. A lot of creepy taxi drivers, and then terrible offensive pickup lines in a bar. A lot of them were just ripped straight out of my life and thrown on screen. But yeah, I mean, I was a young girl. I came from Glasgow, so not exactly the countryside, but I moved to London when I was pretty young with the dream of working in film. So much of your own experiences go into that. And, my mum and my gran were obsessed with the 60s. They used to come down and copy the clothes patterns and liberties because they couldn't afford to buy them. There's all that stuff that gets kind of I suppose, pulled out of you when you're writing something like this.
Absolutely. And Edgar, the 60s has such an amazing set of music, obviously. So I'm wondering, how did you go about choosing the amazing tunes that we hear?
Well, I guess my obsession with the decade started with my parents' record collection, because they had one record box, which I don't ever remember them listening to the albums when I was around. In fact, I was always struck later on by the fact it occurred to me that they stopped buying albums when my older brother was born, which was a bit sad. So I in the days before the internet or even having a portable TV in my room, I would just spend a lot of time listening to those albums. And so I guess that's where my connection and obsession with the decade and trying to pass out the perception from reality started. And then in writing the film, there were a lot of songs. I'd amassed this big playlist of songs that I liked from the period. And obviously, because of the nature of the story, there are so many amazing female singers in the 60s. And a lot of those songs by Dusty Springfield, Cilla Black, Sandy Shaw, Petula Clark, they're these big emotive ballads, and they're always stained with tears. There's always this melancholy in those songs. So it always seemed like that those very dramatic songs should be part of the movie.
Absolutely. And actually, you just touched on it there. We have to talk about Anya's performance of Downtown. Firstly, at what point did you know that she was your Sandy? But also, when did you hear that first version of that stunning song? Well,
one of the ironies is that I had told Anya Taylor-Joy about this movie 6 years ago, maybe 2 years before me and 3 years before me and Christy had written a word of it. I told her the whole story over coffee in Los Angeles, the first time I ever met her. And at that point, I was thinking about her playing Eloise, but then in the intervening time, and especially once we started writing, I'd seen her kind of grow up on screen in other things, and sort of, almost, just seeing her on the red carpet and in kind of sort of fashion magazines, just kind of turn into this amazing exotic firework, so it just sort of started to occur to us. It's maybe Anya should play Sandy, the 60s kind of character. And luckily she was totally on board with that. And then actually in the original outline of the plot, the audition scene was not in there. It was actually Christy's suggestion. And as soon as Christy suggested it, I said, she should sing Petula Clark's Downtown. And I can't remember whether I knew that she could sing or not. I think I was aware that she did without necessarily hearing her do it. And then we did a session with Steve Price, the composer, where she sang Downtown, and she has an incredible voice. And we did two versions of it, a fast one and then a slow melancholic one. And it was let's use the slow one and let's do it a cappella. And that's what's in the movie.
Oh my gosh, well, you lucked out. What a performance. And Christy, I wanted to ask you about writing for the two female leads as well, and how important it was to bring that sort of strength and vulnerability, but also through the exploitation of women that we see.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you're writing a horror or a thriller, you're trying to draw in stuff from real life that genuinely feels frightening and terrifying, and that people can see and relate to. And I've been a young woman, not so much now, but I was a young woman in London for all of my 20s, and I definitely felt that that fear. So you're trying to draw in that and just pitch it exactly right. And I think Edgar and I spent a lot of time, really discussing how women are preyed upon, like how women kind of like find themselves in situations and find themselves stuck. We talked a lot about that, and we had mountains of research that were first-hand accounts from, you know, men and women that lived in Soho in the 60s and right the way through to present day. And a lot of that was really harrowing. It was always just getting the line of that right, where you feel the urge to go back in time. With Eloise, you want to travel back to the 60s, and then when it turns, that dream starts to feel like a nightmare. So that was always the sort of tightrope walk.
Oh, so brilliantly done. So I was wondering, as well as Soho, what other city might you like to explore on screen in the way that you did here? So perhaps if there was a sequel, Last Night in what city and why, perhaps?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I feel like somebody pointed out that like most of the times I've tackled like a town, I make it sound awful. like my hometown in Somerset in Hot Fuzz, like sort of it's kind of home to like a killer cult. Like in the World's End, like them going back to their hometown in the kind of like the sort of a new town in the kind of like the satellites of London is like sort of a terrible experience. And now I'm not sure it's the best tourist advert for Soho. So it has to be a nice version of it now, doesn't it? So what would you pick as your city?
I mean, I'd maybe go Tomorrow Night in the Isle of Skye. A very gentle Scottish comedy. Or I lived and worked in Dublin for a bunch of years, and I would like another night out in Dublin. I would have that. Those are my two, the Isle of Skye and Dublin. No favourites here.
I think it would be just a really quiet, like sort of like 24 hours in St Agnes in Cornwall, where the shops close at 2 p.m. So like sort of like, you know, the latter half of the movie is very quiet.
What if it's they haven't brought enough food with them and they can't get a delivery because they're in the middle of nowhere and it's just them out searching.
Yeah, well, that happened to me when I went to St Agnes.
Me too.
I suddenly realised it's like, oh, Deliveroo doesn't exist in Cornwall yet. Okay.
Oh, it really made me laugh. That would be Londoners in Cornwall, of course.
Yeah. That's us.
I know they don't. That's the thing. The locals would be like saying, "Who's this guy with his hire car? Get out!"
Last Night in Soho is out now. And with that, thanks for checking me out on the Bring the Film podcast today. I'm Patrick Downs, and you can keep in touch across Twitter at I'm Patrick Downs, also on Instagram or facebook.com/officialpoptart. And there's also the website soof.co.uk. This is a podcast from soof.co.uk.